Good afternoon from the last day here at European Utility Week. With me this afternoon, I have Mike Bates, Global Head of Business Development for Energy from Intel, and Philippe Villet, who is the Vice President, Global Energy Utilities for Capgemini. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Edge computing, why is it so important? What does it mean from an Intel perspective, from a Capgemini perspective, and what can we anticipate it's going to mean for utilities going forward? Mike, let me start with you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think we all can agree that the utility model is changing, one from centralized generation to decentralized. I think it's a movement that's been underway for several years now. And I think the ultimate result is the need for more compute power at the edge to be able to organize and manage those distributed loads in a way that can act like baseload. So if the ultimate goal is to replace baseload such as coal plants with cleaner, intelligent technologies at the edge, and those technologies being solar, which is intermittent, wind, which is intermittent, the ability to put some compute at the edge and smooth the peaks and valleys of that load, and again, make it come off of that aggregated group of devices and look like baseload, I think is the ultimate goal. I think the industry is moving that direction, and we think compute is required to be able to enable it.
The industry is also moving in the fact that they are moving from a product, a commodity, electricity, gas, water, to a service, meaning that they are entering in the customer homes, in the customer buildings, in tertiary buildings, in factories, and where we find also devices to manage energy and to make anything from telecommunication, entertainment, security, where we have also devices and data.
That was actually something that I was going to ask. I mean, you don't just see edge computing as something that will enable better load management or demand management. There are a lot more opportunities from that perspective, right?
Including for the operations of the utilities themselves, including for centralized generations to make more efficient centralized generations, including for better managing the grids, self-healing, better connection from renewables, distributed energy, and so on and so forth. Multiple examples, multiple use cases, and this is perhaps a question: how and by which use case will I start tomorrow morning?
I mean, to your point, a lot of these loads are going to be consumer-owned loads, so electric vehicle chargers in garages, rooftop solar, batteries in the garage as well. Those are loads that also need some compute power and connection to be able to deliver that customer value proposition, but also then to extract out of that customer value proposition the utility benefits that Philippe was talking about. And it's been really one of the challenges to move this industry forward, because the value proposition for the consumer is much different than the value proposition for the utility.
Yes.
So consumers want to see home automation, home security, different types of services that they find value in, including energy management, but not solely energy management. And then if you using compute power and AI or deep learning on the edge, you can then extract out from that consumer participation the value that the grid needs to find. So managing where EVs are being charged, pushing market pricing down to the devices so that they can operate based on changing market conditions. So I think it's a new era. It's early days, which is great for all of us, but something really exciting to look forward to.
It's a no-brainer. This technology is mature today, enabled by cloud, enabled by gateways, IoT, and telecommunications, which are progressing, and you have many solutions. The question is more, where can I start? Where can I put my money and get my results out of it for myself, utility, for my customers, for the generation renewable companies that are loading the grid and loading the customer too. The question is, how do we start?
So if I may expand on that a little bit then, where are you seeing the opportunities for IoT, connected devices, this increasingly connected world that we live in?
IoT is not new, in fact, for utilities. Smart metering is a typical IoT project.
SCADA?
SCADA is
Yeah.
a typical IoT project. It's not new. And you have skills in the utilities, but not at the scale of the new world that is coming. But this is not new.
Mike, from the Intel perspective?
I think utilities are not the only entities that recognize this transformation is underway, especially at the far edge of the grid in the consumer home and small to medium-sized businesses. I think other companies, other new market entrants are recognizing the opportunity as well. And I think the sense of urgency that we're starting to see and recognize is utilities wanting to defend their turf, extend their brand into the home and their trusted brand to be that provider of the kind of services we're talking about. And if, the concern I have is if we don't move fast enough, the switching cost to get customers from off of the new market entrance solutions to back to the utility solutions are going to be very high. So I think the time is now to establish the beachhead, extend the grid into the home, using the grid as a platform to delivery of the services while the opportunity still exists, while the utility brand is still the trusted brand for these kinds of services. And I think we've seen that these last few days here.
Because you're already seeing companies like Google encroaching on that environment by the offering of, say, the Nest thermostat. It's already, that's something that a utility could and should be offering directly to their customers, right?
Yeah, trying to offer today, but not only for managing the heat in a condominium, but managing all the energy and all the services at home, at work, at factories. This is a space where utilities are not the only players, as Mike mentioned. You have multiple offers from other industry coming, and there is a risk of disruption because this value is interesting for many companies.
But even Google recognizes the value of partnering with utilities. So all the Nest thermostats you see and some of those Google smart home solutions that are getting deployed, in many cases they get deployed in partnership with the utility. So the utility can work with a company like that and extract out some of the benefits. So I think there's an opportunity for partnerships, and I think utilities recognize the value of partnerships with companies like that. But again, I think those type of companies, how long do they wait for the partnership? As they do see the same opportunity that exists.
And we recommend at Capgemini to the utilities to take the leadership of ecosystems, in fact.
Right.
Because we need multiple providers, technology providers, equipment suppliers, to bring the services to the customers and to the users of this data, this power of edge computing.
I'd like to get back to the recommendations question, but before I do that, the one question I do have is, what do you see the role of artificial intelligence being in this, again, hyper-connected world?
I think it has a great play. So if you think about what we were talking about before, an ecosystem of devices connected to the grid that have a lot of intermittency, again, wind, solar, the ability to push deep learning to the edge to understand the relationship between these devices and make local real-time decisions on how to balance the load. I think it's all AI driven. Potentially the learning occurs in the cloud based on what happens on the edge, and it pushes the learnings to the edge. I think that's a fantastic opportunity for AI and the AI application. I think in addition to that, the coming of blockchain as a tool to settle transactions that occur at the edge, I think it's another need to have AI and compute at the edge as well.
Okay.
And the players have to take care of two main constraints. The first one being cybersecurity, because these infrastructures are vital for the countries and for the economy. And the second one, which is more European, is GDPR, the data privacy. That's it. We have to manage it.
You mentioned, interestingly enough, that you felt that perhaps edge computing would help enable some of that data protection.
Well, it does, because some sources of data don't have to be transported all the way back to the cloud, and that data can stay local. How a customer uses their energy and the energy profiles, which is very private information, You don't want to necessarily expose it to the cloud, but if you can keep some of that learning on how a customer uses energy, how they prefer to use energy, keep it local, I think that can help us manage through those privacy issues.
Philippe, last question for you, and that is, what are the recommendations that Capgemini is making to utilities with regards to edge computing, the integration of artificial intelligence?
The first recommendation is to move very fast, but to choose the fights, the use cases which has a real payback or which prevent from disintermediation. Because they already manage this kind of technology in their grids, in their generation plants. This is only a scale problem. And also a money problem, because there are a lot of investment to make.
It's always a money problem.
Always. This is our recommendation. That's why we created Digital Edge concept to encourage the utilities to move forward faster as they can.
Mike, from your perspective?
I think the revenue generation, where is the money? I think that's a compelling story for utilities now. So utilities selling the commodity is one thing. There's probably pretty thin margins on the sale of the commodity. But if we can use data to create new services like monitoring your HVAC system, looking for issues, working with our customers on saving energy, there's services that you can wrap around the new relationship with the customer. We're even working with another company to voice enable call centers. So move the call center down to the home into a voice platform. Why was my bill so high? So all that data can answer questions and create relationships that are very sticky. And I think there's new services that we're not even thinking of today that utilities are the right company to be able to take advantage of.
We interviewed the utilities on that, and they answered that in 3 or 4 years, the 4 business models which seem the most promising in terms of revenues and margins are EV infrastructure management, charging, discharging, microgrid as a service, energy as a service, and solar and storage where the energy is used. And they bet on the fact that in 3 or 4 years it will represent between 5, 10, 15% of their revenues, new revenue streams. So this is really significant.
Well, I mean, we already are seeing situations where utilities are, for instance, providing storage opportunities to neighborhoods or streets. They're providing the infrastructure, and the neighborhood can then feed into that infrastructure already. So I imagine that this is a lot of where we're going to be seeing some really great innovation going forward.
All of the smart city projects that I've been involved with are the anchor partner is the utility. So the utility offering services that we're talking about today, and then extending it to city services, kiosk, public charging stations. And so I think that's going to be another interesting trend to see how utilities and cities begin to work together in some of these initiatives.
Yeah, I suppose as the owner of probably the most extensive network for communication, it makes sense for the utility to be that anchor in a lot of this.
I agree.
So,
Me too.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it. From European Utility Week, thanks for watching.
Thank you.